Almost every guru on the internet will promise to 10x your business, but almost none of them know what 10x actually means or why it works, because for them, 10x is simply a slogan. For us, 10x is a science. Scaling.com is the only company in the world that uses real psychological science to take any business doing at least $1 million revenue, and we can 10x that business in 3 years or less. That is not a buzzword, and over the next few moments, I'm going to show you why. But before I show you anything, I want you to understand the one thing that makes us different. We didn't just simply say to these business owners, go and scale. We put every one of them through the same proven process, an actual step-by-step scaling framework. And what you're about to watch is that process working. This is not luck. These are not just a few lucky outliers. This is a method running the same way in business after business. So here's what it looks like in real businesses, though they're in different industries and they started at different sizes, but all of them were stuck exactly where you're stuck right now. So let's start with Xavier, for example, and I actually wrote about Xavier in The Science of Scaling. So he was a lawyer stuck at about 2 or 3 million revenue when he joined scaling, and what he found when he began operating from a true scale goal was that he was running about 15 different types of law in his firm, most of which were not profitable. So he began to apply the scaling framework, and he cut the amount of forms of law that they were doing to 2. He specialized, and then he began to truly operate at scale. He went from about 2.5 million to 8 million very aggressively in the first year. Now he's on a path to about 20 million, maybe 30 in his second year. He now has 40 lawyers under him. He's no longer the CEO. He's gotten himself out of the day-to-day. Now let's jump over to Alicia. When she learned the scaling framework, she had 10 clients, just 10 clients using her software. We invited her to set an impossible goal. She went for 1,000 clients in just 90 days using her software. And from there, she found a pathway that opened up a partnership that took her from 10 clients to 8,000 clients in just a week. Now let me tell you a little bit about Amit. This guy is courageous. So he spent over $1 million getting coaching and training over 7 years and was still plateaued, still completely stuck, under a few $1 million revenue in his company. Then he learned and applied the scaling framework. He set an impossible goal, and he immediately realized that out of his 220 clients, only 20 of them were above the floor where he needed to be. He averaged about $20,000 per client at that time. He then set his floor at $100,000. Only the ones that were above $100,000 could use his services. So he got rid of almost all of his clients and focused above the 100,000 rank. He set that floor, mastered it, and then very quickly set the floor again to enterprise level clients, where the new floor became $500,000 clients. He wouldn't accept anyone below that level. He then mastered that level and began getting clients at that level so fast that he had to set his goal even higher because the 10x goal became too small for him. Now let me tell you about a guy named Alex. And by the way, we have tons of case studies like Alex. It took him actually 25 years to get his business to about 1 or 2 million. He realized he actually needed to start a different company that could scale rapidly. He started that company, and it took him only 4 months to get past his other business that he had been growing for 25 years. Then he joined Scaling.com, and it only took him a few more months to get his business to doing 350,000 monthly recurring revenue. Now let me tell you a little bit about Carl. Carl is another great example. So Carl, when we met Carl, when he read The Science of Scaling and he immediately joined Scaling.com, he has a fantastic pump business. Pumps that pump water out of wells, underground pumps, above ground pumps, but it had taken him 12 years to get to 10 million revenue when he read The Science of Scaling. Now Carl was a little afraid to initially set a true 10x goal. So he set a 5x goal. He said rather than getting from 10 to 100 million in 3 years, he said, I'm gonna go from 10 to 50 million in 3 years. He wanted to test the method, and he immediately realized he was gonna have to raise his floor and let go of their core product, which were the underground pumps. He told his team, we're no longer going to sell our main product. They had a big $6 million pipeline on that, a team that was optimized for that. After he started applying the scaling framework and joined Scaling.com, it took him 5 months to get from 10 to 22 million, and with a 10x bigger pipeline. He's got $60 million pipeline. He's on his way to about 50 or 60 in his second year. Now let me tell you about Gaurav. He's been in the food franchise business for around 15 years. And during that time, he built up a Wingstop business to 26 locations, and then he read The Science of Scaling, valuated his business at about $50 million. So he said, what would it take me to get to 500 million valuation in 3 years? And quickly he realized his Wingstop business wasn't going to get him there, so he had to find a new pathway. He then put his Wingstop business up for sale, found a powerful pathway in 7 Brews Coffee, focused on that, built a model, 200 locations in 3 years, had to go out and get what we call a super who, a super CFO, and in his first year doing this new business, he blew past his old Wingstop business. In fact, he got to over 60 million revenue in his first year, and in his second year, he's going to be opening, I think it's about 40 to 60 locations. He's on fire. One of the things that happened was he is building a super team, and I asked Gaurav, in your old business, did you even have a CFO or a COO? He said he didn't even have those. He had been doing everything himself, which is very common for entrepreneurs. One of the things I want you to know, just with Gaurav's example and a few others, is the scaling framework works at any level. Gaurav actually went from 0 to 60 million revenue in 1 year. He's on his path to a 500 million valuation. He'll probably get there much faster. But whether you're at 1 million going for 10 million, whether you're at 50 million going for 500 million, we also have companies doing billions of revenue going for multiples of that. The scaling framework works wherever you're at in your business, whatever industry you're in. The scaling framework will transform your business, simplify it down so that it can scale and multiply in its most aggressive form. So what do all these people have in common? Obviously, they come from different businesses, different backgrounds, they have different company sizes. Here's what I want to tell you, and this is why we actually made this video. All of these people were doing exactly what they'd been told before. They had coaches, they had worked with consultants, they had the tactics, the hustle. Several of them had spent small fortunes trying to learn how to grow their business. But despite all of that investment, all that learning, all that hustle, they were still stuck. The reason none of them were scaling was because they were all aiming at the same thing. They were trying to scale the business model that they already had. Instead of trying to optimize their existing business model, they rebuilt it from a single scientific framework. And that is why these people's lives and businesses rapidly transformed. I'm Dr. Benjamin Hardy, one of the founders of Scaling.com. I'm an organizational psychologist. I've written 9 books. These books have sold millions of copies throughout the world. And I've written some of the biggest business books of the last decade. Books like 10X is Easier Than 2X, Who Not How, The Gap in the Gain, Be Your Future Self Now, and most recently, The Science of Scaling. So here's why they were stuck, and probably why you are as well. At your level, the problem has actually shifted. It's no longer about, does this business work? It does obviously work. You're successful. You've made it to a certain level. It's, can this business model scale? And the truth is that your current business model probably can't. It's not until we actually think about your business from scale that we can realize how complex it is. That's the beauty of the scaling framework, is once you begin operating and thinking from 10x, it immediately shows you that most business owners operate linearly. So, for example, if you're at 5 million revenue, you're probably shooting for 6, 7, 8 million revenue. Maybe you're shooting for a 2x. Maybe you're shooting for 10 million revenue. But that goal, a simple 2x goal, is not powerful enough to reshape your business model. It actually just creates more complexity. You cannot scale your existing model, and setting linear goals is the problem. Also, when you go for linear goals, everything continues to go through you. You're the single bottleneck through which everything goes through. It's only until you start thinking in terms of real scale, 10x, that not only can you reshape your business model so that it can scale and start finding the pathways, but also at that level, you have to simplify your role and start building a real team that can scale. I travel all over the world teaching groups of entrepreneurs as well as specific companies how to rapidly scale their business. And often it happens to me that people come up to me and say, Dr. Benjamin Hardy, I love your book. 10x is better than 2x. And I actually just kind of quietly laugh in my head because the book's not actually called 10x is better than 2x. It's called 10x is easier than 2x, and that's actually right. But there's something else that I found as I was teaching entrepreneurs some of these frameworks. This was a few years ago, and that's that people didn't take the concept of 10x literally. They took it metaphorically. They took it as a concept, but not as a literal thing. That's why we wrote The Science of Scaling. That's why we created the scaling framework, is because you actually have to think literally. You have to set a literal 10x goal. That's what happened with all of the entrepreneurs I shared with you before. They took where they were at. They thought of a literal 10x or bigger goal. And then they used that goal to reshape their company. A small goal traps you inside your current model. So if you're at 5 million revenue and you're asking the question, how do we get to 7? That question forces you to simply ask, how do we punch harder? It doesn't teach you how to go and do something different than what you're already doing right now. You don't actually have a growth problem. You have a goal problem. The goal you set determines the pathway you take and all of the decisions you make. This is exactly why we do not let anyone into Scaling.com until they literally set a 10x goal. Once they set a 10x goal and we give them 3 years or less, then and only then are they allowed to be in Scaling.com. And from there, we help them operate completely in everything they do from that 10x scale. That allows them to simplify their business, find pathways they never would have found before, build teams they would have never built before. It not only transforms their identity, transforms their business model, it allows them to get 10x results much faster. And once you set a 10x goal, the beautiful part is that it immediately shows you that almost everything you're doing right now can't work. Almost everything you're doing right now is linear, and it forces you to find the pathway that can scale. That's what filtering is all about. That's what strategy is all about. This is actually why scaling a business and growing a business are two completely different things. Growing a business actually forces you into complexity. It forces you to doing more of what you're currently doing. Scaling a business, meaning you're operating from at least 10x, forces you to simplify everything you're doing. It's actually a far simpler path. It's less competitive. It allows you to have true strategy. It allows you to differentiate what you're doing. Scaling and growth are two different games. Scaling is much easier than linear growth. So how can you actually 10x your business on purpose? You do it by applying the scaling framework. And you've already seen with the case studies I've shared that this is what works. You can 10x your business in the next 3 years. And this is what separates us from any program you've ever tried, or honestly, any program in the world. Everyone hands you strategy and tactics. We start with human psychology because a business only changes when the entrepreneur changes. We have simplified scaling, a concept that used to be a mystery, that was complex and that most people couldn't understand and apply. We have took scaling and we have boiled it down to a scientific and a provable framework. Each one of these, your frame, your floor, and your focus, is rooted in deep psychological science. This is not motivation, and you've seen how it already transforms people and companies. Let me give you a high-level view of how this framework, frame, floor, and focus, work and how it applies in your business. So your frame as a person determines what you see, and it is based on your goals. Your goals determine what you see and what your brain is actively looking for. Your goals determine the pathways you're looking for. It determines what you deem as signal or relevance and what you deem as noise. Psychologists call this selective attention, and it is actually one of the most critical aspects of not only human intelligence, but also human agency. Let's go back to Alicia for a second, one of the examples I gave earlier. When we first met Alicia, she had 10 clients using her software, and it had taken her quite a while to get those 10 clients. We then told her to set the goal of having 1,000 clients in just 90 days, an extreme goal. And she said once she set that goal of having 1,000 clients in 90 days, in her own words, she said, my current thinking couldn't get me there. She had no clue how to do it. And that's actually the point of setting a scale goal. There's a lot of research on this. They call them stretch goals. And it's a goal you set that you literally don't know how to achieve. This is why the quality and the scale of the goal matter a lot. Because once you actually scale the goal to 10x, right, or more, immediately what you find is that most of what you're doing right now won't work. The present doesn't shape our future, although that's the linear approach. It's actually our future that shapes and reorganizes who we are in the present. Our goals shape who we are in the present. And so the next feature is that it immediately begins to raise your floor. Most business owners are optimizing problems. They're trying to solve problems that they wouldn't even be solving if they were operating from scale, because those problems would fall below the floor. So once you start going for scale, you're going to have to raise your floor and eliminate the majority of what you do. Amateurs add things, whereas masters subtract things. So the first thing you're going to do when you start operating from scale is raising your floor and letting go of what can't get you there. This then allows you to filter, find, and focus on what actually can help you scale there. And as Steve Jobs said, focus is saying no to 100 things. He even further said innovation is saying no to 1,000 things. After teaching tens of thousands of business leaders this framework, as well as hundreds of thousands through the book, we found pretty clearly that raising the floor is the most difficult part. Raising the floor is hard because it means letting go of what you currently have so that you can actually focus on what matters. This is a true law of scaling, even called the Pareto distribution, and it's that results are not evenly distributed. Results do not occur evenly. They follow a power law where a few things create almost all of the results. Think about the entire economy. Way more than half of the economy is driven by way less than 1% of the companies. Or you could take things like books. I write books. There's 4 million books published a year. Most of them are read by less than 100 people. Most of the book sales come from way less than 1% of the authors. The same is true in music. There's actually hundreds of millions of songs created every single year, but a few of them are downloaded more than all of the rest combined. This is the power law. The few things drive almost all the results. It's also true in your company, and why it matters is that what you focus on determines the results you'll get. Let's just go back to Amit for a second. He had 200 clients, and so he was spread thin. When he raised his floor and focused on the clients above the floor, in his case above 100,000, he was able to scale very quickly. And then he raised his floor again to 500,000. Now he's focused on enterprise level clients and he's 10xing very quickly. He actually has to probably set closer to a 50x goal. Strategy and focus are two very connected concepts. I love the quote from John Doerr that a goal properly set is halfway reached. Once you begin truly operating from scale or 10x, rather than just linear growth, that allows you to raise your floor and strip out all the noise and all the complexity, keeping your business stuck. And then you can build a focused business model on something that can truly stand out, on something that's truly differentiated and escapes competition and scale 10x or more in the next 3 years. We often honestly see 20x's, 30x's, 50x's once people understand frame, floor, and focus. That, in a nutshell, is the science of scaling. And as far as we know, we are the only company on earth that has codified this down into a framework and have proven it by helping thousands of companies to scale. And this isn't just my claim. Scaling.com is first and foremost a research firm as well as a scaling advisory. And we now have outside institutions literally researching and studying our scalers because the results are so extreme. I'm an organizational psychologist. I've spent my entire career studying what allows people as well as organizations to rapidly transform while most stay stuck. I've written several books now at this point. Who Not How, The Gap in the Gain, 10x is easier than 2x. I've also written deep psychology books, Willpower Doesn't Work, Personality Isn't Permanent, Be Your Future Self Now. All of this got distilled down and boiled into a framework that works. This is why when Tony Robbins read The Science of Scaling, he said that it was a paradigm shift. In his own words, he said that this is a model for geometric growth that takes what most people dismiss as unrealistic and makes it your new normal. The Science of Scaling is not only all of my previous work combined, but I ran thousands of companies through refining that scaling framework to give you The science, the psychology, and the strategy all boil down into a single concentrated framework. So the science is real, the proof is real. The only question is, for you, why now? For as long as business has existed and studied, scaling has been treated like luck, raw hustle, or a stack of disconnected targets that you bolt on and pray. Honestly, it's only been studied in retrospect, not something that you can actually engineer. There's never been a simple, valid, and reliable framework for scaling your company. What you're looking at is the first time scaling has been turned into a real science, one core framework of principles that works in any business. It did not exist before, now it does, and almost no one is operating with it. This is actually an exponential opportunity for you right now. You already know this. Most business owners out there, most people that you deem as competition, they are all operating linearly. They're taking their existing business and they're trying to grow 20, 30, 40%. Here's the tough fact: if you're operating in linear time, it goes very quickly. Very quickly, years, months, and decades go by, and your business is growing like this. You can compress time and you can experience 10, 20, 30 years of growth in 2 or 3, but you have to make that your goal, and once you set that frame the right way, it will eliminate 99% of your options. It's going to force you to raise your floor and focus on the thing that can create the power law results, the few things that can scale aggressively. Most people won't do this. Most people are going to stay in linear time, and they're going to be 10, 20, 30 years down the road and just very slow growth. That is not how you scale. If you're still thinking after hearing our philosophy, our science, our framework, and our case studies that this is like every other program, let me just quickly tell you what scaling.com is not. We are not coaches. To be even compared in that category would frankly be an insult. We do not hand you a pile of tactics and strategies and bolt them onto your existing model that currently is straining and struggling. That's what you tried before, and that's why it didn't stick. We do the opposite. We use the science to help you build a model and help you find the pathways that can help you 10x faster, and then we help you raise your floor and cut everything else that's going to slow you down. There's something we hear almost every single day, and you might be even feeling it yourself. And if you're feeling this or thinking this, I understand and I empathize with you. You might be thinking my industry is unique, it's a different situation, or my company is a really unique thing. Here's the thing: your industry is not the problem. Your current business model was designed for linear growth. It was not designed to exponentially scale. Your current model won't 10x. In Scaling.com, we only see a few qualifiers as things that really matter, and it's not your industry. It frankly comes down to, first off, are you at 1 million revenue? That's our floor. You have to be at least 1 million revenue in your business to gain access and membership into our research and advising process at Scaling.com. The second one is that you have to fully be committed to 10xing your business in 3 years or less. If you want anything less than that, there are a lot of other programs that can help you have linear growth. We do not let anyone into Scaling.com unless they are fully committed to 10xing their business, literally, not metaphorically, in 3 years or less. The reason you've probably never heard scaling as a science is simple. Almost all business advice is written for beginners. It's all created for beginners. It gives you more tactics, more ideas. It has never been distilled down to a psychology. Let me tell you what Scaling.com is. You are paired with a scaling strategist, someone who has scaled their own business, and many of our scaling strategists actually have left their businesses to join us and help us do that. You work with that scaling strategist one-on-one. You meet with them every single month. They help you establish the right goal. They hold you to that 10x target. They help you think about your business very differently than you can think on your own. They will challenge you. They will ask you very difficult questions, and they will work with you to ensure that you get to 10x. They will be very honest with you, very rigorous with you, and they will help you to see when you're getting pulled back below your floor or when you're going in a direction that's going to stop you from scaling your company. You will be surrounded in a room of business owners where everyone is held to the same standard. Everyone is 10xing. This is actually what psychologists call the Pygmalion effect. According to the Pygmalion effect, we rise to the standard, to the situation of those around us. And the beautiful part in what we've created in Scaling.com is that everyone is 10x in their business. Also, every single week we release new case studies of those who are applying the framework the most powerfully. We take the outliers and we show you how companies in every industry are applying this framework to 10x their business. You'll also get access to the scaling portal. It is in that portal that you will do your one-on-one strategy calls with your strategists. Also in that portal, you'll get access to our library of training, content, case studies. There's also a community feature in the portal, which is kind of our own internal social media where you can communicate with other scalers on various topics, strategize with them. Also inside the portal is Scalar AI. This thing is not only trained on your individual calls, it gets to know you very well. It actually studies all of your calls with your strategist, and as well as anything you put in it. But this AI is trained on 10,000 plus individual scaling calls and shows all the best ways you can apply the framework to raise your floor, find pathways. This thing gets deeply trained on you and also takes the best that we learn from all of the other scalers. If you're serious about scaling and learning what it actually takes to do that, and you absolutely can 10x in 3 years, and if you're ready to stop hitting the same ceiling year after year after year and stop having a business that completely runs through you, then I would ask you, fill out the form on this page. It takes only 3 minutes. Fill out the form.